Welcome back. A federal grand jury indicting 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian companies for their alleged part in a plot to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. President Trump is claiming vindication, saying that it shows now there was no collusion on the part of his campaign. So where does the investigation go now? I want to bring in the former independent counsel in the Whitewater scandal, Ken Starr. Good to see you, sir. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Oh, my pleasure, Maria.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about. You were in this seat of special counsel. Your reaction to the 13 Russian nationals and the 3 companies indicted on Friday?
Well, first, we're now aiming our guns, so to speak, where they should be aimed. I think we should stop pointing fingers at one another in this country and realize who the real enemy is. And I say enemy. These were spies. They came into our country. They spent millions of dollars. They didn't need to collude with anyone. They had a massive operation based in St. Petersburg, Russia, not Florida. And we now know that the people who were financing this, according to the indictment, were people extremely close to Vladimir Putin. So the real target here is the Russian government, which was seeking to do what? They were seeking to sow discord. The focus has been, just one more thing, the focus has been on all this elect President Trump. But they were also saying in some of the Facebook ads, vote for Bernie Sanders and then vote for Jill Stern. It was an effort to pit us against one another, and Vladimir Putin has succeeded. There's all this finger pointing, and the great thing about this indictment by Bob Mueller and his team is that they have refocused. If Americans will listen, if they will read that 36-page indictment, they will see, my goodness, the real enemy here is not within, it's the enemy without.
But you know what, Ken, I mean, the issue that I have with that is that that's nothing new. I mean, I've got to tell you, I remember going to St. Petersburg when I was working at a different company 10 years ago. And when I went to St. Petersburg and Moscow 10 years ago, I was told, Maria, don't bring your BlackBerry, don't bring any of your devices.
Right.
As soon as you enter Russian airspace, they will have access to all of your stuff. It was at that time I had a different BlackBerry. I had a different name because I didn't want the Russians to be able to hack into my Rolodex and my calendar and anything else they could. That was 10 years ago, even 12 years ago when I went to Moscow as well. So how does President Trump get mixed up in all of this? We knew that Russia was trying to undermine the U.S. and the West in general. They also tried it in Europe. Why this constant focus on President Trump then?
Well, I think it does go back to the basis of the investigation itself, the dossier, the Steele dossier, which has been exposed as having just rumors and innuendo. There are real issues in terms of the transparency of senior officials of the United States government with the FISA court. You know, the FISA court was developed and created to be a safeguard to protect American liberty against executive branch excess. But there's an assumption there, and that is that the government is being, the Justice Department or the FBI or whomever, is being honest and transparent. And there was a real breakdown there that we know. Yeah. Full transparency to the court. And I'm encouraged by what the Attorney General just said, which is that the Inspector General, you know, Maria, there are a lot of calls, let's have another special counsel. I totally disagree with that. Really? Let Mueller do his job. But the Inspector General was created by the Congress of the United States and signed into law by President Reagan years ago for the very purpose of handling this kind of thing. Yeah. And that office is an aggressive office, and as we just heard again, or we were reminded, a lot of the emails that have come out that are being so troubling, the emails from within, the text messages and so forth, are the result of the Inspector General's of investigation, which seems to be going along. We don't know, but it seems to be going along professionally.
So I have a lot to ask you about this because I want to ask you about the documents. But based on all of that and what you just heard in terms of Jeff Sessions' response to it, do you think up until now this does vindicate President Trump then, given the fact that we now know who the bad actors are, the Russian nationals?
There's not a word in the indictment. The answer is no. There's not a word in the indictment that suggests collusion. In fact, there's a word that suggests non-collusion, and that's the word unwittingly. That's right. That appears early on in the indictment. And that was in connection with Florida. It was not in connection with folks at Trump Tower. This is on-the-ground stuff, millions of dollars being poured into Facebook ads, working with local operatives in different states. They targeted certain states, and they are, again, these are Russians who came into our country under fake IDs, and they opened up bank accounts and so forth. All this was funded by oligarchs from what we now know out of Russia who are very close to Vladimir Putin. So at the highest levels of the Russian government, there was an effort to, again, sow discord. That's what is so upsetting to me, to sow discord, because we're such a pluralistic society. So we have to believe in, out of many, one, that we are united in our love for our country. So let's, again, start focusing on the real enemy. The real problem is the Russian government and its anti-democratic, its authoritarian regime,
and the information warfare that they apparently apparently executed. Let me ask you this: you just heard the conversation with Jeff Sessions. These FISA abuses, the fact that the FBI did not tell the FISA court that the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton campaign paid for that dossier that they used to wiretap American citizens. Your take on that? And you know, I thought it was really incredible that Attorney General Jeff Sessions just said on our air there are 27 instances of classified information being leaked, and he is investigating that. These leaks have been, I mean, these are felonies.
And they have to be investigated. Absolutely right. No, I found that encouraging because a nation has to engage in common sense and to protect its secrets. If we overclassify materials, let's work on that. But if it's classified, it shall not be leaked. And especially if, and this isn't if it was being leaked for political purposes within the executive branch. That is just an unpardonable sin. So again, I am encouraged by the fact that the Inspector General and his office, it's an able team. I worked with them when I was in the Justice Department as Chief of Staff to the Attorney General. These are really good and honest people, just like Attorney General Sessions said.
Well, let me ask you, because you were so critical with documents in terms of the Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky scandal. The document release here is equally as important. What do you want to see in terms of documents being released, and compare what you were going through to what we're watching today?
Well, the documents that I want to see released are those, and I know these are judgment calls, so it's easy to paint with a broad brush. But I think, especially with respect to the two intelligence committees, the Senate and the House, there needs to be a new paradigm, a paradigm of transparency. We need to get these sets of issues behind us, and we also then need to know the truth in terms of whether there was wrongdoing. There's a presumption of innocence in this country that is very precious to us. But let's get to the facts. Let's get all the facts, and then hold people accountable. That's our system. And let's be fair in that process. But let's be thorough, and let's also, frankly, be aggressive. Let's get to the bottom of what happened within the Bureau, within the Justice Department, and let's also make sure that the Senate and the House have the opportunity to give us that check and balance that I think the Founding Fathers envisioned in this country.
I know Michael Horowitz and the Inspector Generals, they're going to come out with another report in the next couple of weeks, and I expect that's why some of these FBI guys have been reassigned, because they're part of that report. Do you believe Robert Mueller, real quick here, Robert Mueller will look at these FISA abuses and what has gone on at the top of the FBI as part of his Russia probe?
I don't think so, but again, we're behind the veil of ignorance. His mandate is to look at the issue of collusion. Right. And I'm not sure how that fits into it. But here's the thing. You know, this indictment was announced by Rod Rosenstein, and that tells you that this is the Justice Department, President Trump's Justice Department, that is looking at these things. Michael Horowitz, who you rightly mentioned, is a career civil servant reflecting the highest traditions of the Justice Department. Yeah. Ken, great to see you. Thanks very much for your insights this morning. My pleasure. Ken Starr.